Have you ever just pulled out your phone and wondered, what's inside? What makes it work? And who are some of the incredibly smart people who are responsible for developing some of the amazing technology that we use every day? Welcome to Israel. Did you know that Israel has the highest concentration of startups after Silicon Valley? Known for their many Nobel Prizes and scientific breakthroughs, Israel has found its way into the big leagues of the industry in just over 70 years of existence as a country. But how? In an effort to answer this question, I've met with New York Times bestselling author and co-author of Startup Nation, Saul Singer. So, Saul, tell me a little bit about the difference of, say, the path of an Israeli young person and maybe the path of a Western young person.
Sure, there's a huge difference in that an American or someone anywhere in the West, basically their horizon is, as they're growing up, is the university. And beyond that, they can't really see what happens after that. So for Israelis, it's their military service. Boys go in for 3 years, women for 2 years. So if you compare the sort of maturing process, the level of responsibility that they get when they're in that service to what kids do in university, there's a pretty big difference that I think has a big impact on Israelis.
That 2 or 3 year time in the Army really does serve to, I suppose, grow you up a bit and help you to think, teach you how to think, right?
It basically is a constant exposure to being given responsibility, having to solve real problems. This is not like a game. It's like a job, really.
Yeah, right.
And so you get that, you get that very kind of shaping experience even before, age, say, 21, 22. You've already got this, kind of life-changing experience behind you. And then you go to university.
Yeah. And then the world's open after that.
Yeah.
So Saul, there's this buzz going on about Israel being a startup nation. What exactly does that mean?
So Israel has about 6,500 startups right now, which is by far the highest density of startups in the world. And we're getting about 2.5 times as much venture investment, the money that goes into startups, than the US. Many times as much as Europe. So this is a incredible phenomenon that we wrote about in our book.
In the book, Startup Nation.
That's correct.
Why did you write it? What was sort of your, reasoning for writing that book?
So actually I co-wrote it with Dan Senor, and we, Dan, particularly coming from New York, I lived here in Israel, he was amazed how many startups there were here, and he thought that, no one's told this story before. We were surprised that no one had written a book about this before. Mm-hmm. So, we decided to write the story, and it was about, why, how, why didn't this happen somewhere else? What is it about Israel?
Yeah, and I actually think that's a good question. We're talking about, this massive investment into Israel and the ingenuity and sort of the innovation and all of these types of things here in Israel, this tiny country. What's unique about Israel that really makes it the startup nation?
So one big factor we thought was that Israel itself is a startup. It started with an idea, like a startup, and it took a lot of drive and determination and willingness to take risk to turn that idea into reality. And like most startup ideas, people thought it was crazy. And
the state of Israel.
Yeah,
crazy idea.
The idea to revive, after 2,000 years, a sovereign Jewish state just seemed crazy to most people. And it was incredibly difficult, like startups. I mean, startups, most of them fail.
Well, thank God it didn't fail.
Yeah. So it actually affects, I think, the way kids grow up here, that we try to give them a little more freedom, let them take more risk, become a little bit more resilient. And that's also because when they become 18 or so, they go into the Army. And so that's another huge factor here, because in the military, they learn how to get stuff done. They learn how to solve really tough problems. They learn how to deal with responsibility. All these things that are actually incredibly important for entrepreneurship.
Obviously, Israel has lots of security concerns. Do you see that contributing to also sort of this drive, this entrepreneurial spirit? Does that contribute at all to this startup nation?
I think it does, and not just because we need to be in the military. There's a certain need for resilience that's understood in this society. And I think that really contributes to entrepreneurial ability and thinking. It basically we wouldn't be here if we didn't innovate. It's how we've coped with being in a place with no resources, tiny country, bad neighborhood.
Lots of desert.
Yeah.
Where you're going to grow the food and.
Yeah, the first thing we had to do was innovate around the fact that there was no water here. And so we've been growing things in the desert. We've been planting trees at probably faster than any other country. Just incredible innovation right around that, and the pioneering spirit that went into building this country.
What does the startup nation look like today? Right now, if you're in Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or Haifa or anywhere in between, what does that actually translate into?
So I think what happens soon after you get off the plane here is that you feel the creative energy. Mm-hmm. It's that creative energy that goes into not only technology, but also into social innovation. There's tons of that here. And what's interesting also is it's very broad. It's everything from digital health to ag, water, cyber, fintech, and every kind of technology you can think of is going on here. And you can search online and you'll find hundreds of startups in pretty much every technology you can think of. So it's very broad, and I think that there's a higher concentration of startups doing really revolutionary things. Not another app to find dog food or a better restaurant or something. Solving really tough problems, which I think are very exciting and that the world really needs today.
I've come to a local bus stop in the center of Israel, where the hub of all of this innovation is located. I've met up with Yovav, one of the lead thinkers at Move It, the world's largest transportation app with over 500 million users. So Yovav, what was the goal whenever Move It was started?
We started 7 years ago with the idea to simplify urban mobility by giving citizens an application that will help them get around their cities using any mean of transportation except for their private car.
All in one place.
All in one place. One app that gives you everything that you need. And today we have more than 550 million users all around the world. We provide our services in more than 3,000 cities now, across 92 countries. And we are helping cities these days, not only the consumers, but also the cities, to plan and operate and introduce innovative mobility solutions for the benefit of the citizens.
So Yovav, we're actually at a bus stop right now. Where are we going?
So we're actually going to do a trip.
Okay.
And we're going to travel to the main train station not far away from here.
Right. Using the app.
Using the app, using Move It. Basically what I do, I basically launch Move It.
Yeah.
And I plan my route to that train station.
So here we are right now using the app, and we just got on this bus and it's going to tell us when to get off.
Exactly. It's going to tell us when to get off. It's going to send us a reminder when to do that, so I can put my app in the background. I can go back to doing emails or sending text messages.
It'll pop up on the screen.
And it's just it knows how the bus is traveling. It knows where we are exactly, when we're supposed to get off. And it's going to pop a notification when the right time is to get off. Israel is a teeny country. You don't start a company in Israel in order to just be number one in Israel. So Israeli entrepreneurs immediately will think about going global.
But Israel does serve as a great it's a beta, it's a test place because you have several urban centers around Israel to sort of test things out and get a good sample, I guess.
Yeah, Israelis are great early adopters of new technologies. Beyond the fact that we're very creative in creating them, we also are very curious to try new technologies.
Why do you think Israelis are early
Part
adopters?
of the genes, part of the culture, part of the taking risks and not being afraid to fail or to admit that you're not successful in something and then fixing some stuff and trying again.
It's thriving here because of that, the willingness to fail and get back up and do it
Absolutely.
again. Resilience, determination.
Absolutely. You need certain mentality of the people, of the leaders, but also the employees to have that type of mentality.
I've come to Nazareth, a predominantly Arab city in the north of Israel. This is where Jesus was raised and where a large community of Christian Arabs are based. Have you ever heard of Silicon Valley? Well, I'm in what the locals call Shawarma Valley in Nazareth, where a group of entrepreneurs are trying to get into the world of high-tech startups. I've come to meet Fadi Swidan, the director of the Business Incubator and Hybrid Accelerator, who's on a mission to transform and stimulate the Arab economy here in Israel.
We really want to bridge the gap between the Arabs and the Jewish. We have to bring to the Arab community new kind of industry. And this kind of industry was the high-tech. Nazareth especially was living all the time on the tourism industry.
Yeah.
And because of that, all the businesses we have here came just to support this kind of industry. Most of them are food, coffee shops, souvenirs, and so on.
Okay.
And what we are trying to do is to bring them new kind of industry, kind of hope for new industry, how we can really develop and be part or engage with what is going here in Israel, with the ecosystem, with the economy of Israel, if you want. All this started here in Israel back in the 90s. The Arabs wasn't part of that. For example, myself, I finished Technion back in 91, 92. I couldn't find a job here because all the high-tech industry was somehow related to army issues and security issues and so on.
Yeah.
So now it's much more open, and because of that, we are trying to help our entrepreneurs to run their startups and to create new jobs, qualified jobs, quality jobs for the Arab community, not just to be, at the traditional segments like transportation, tourism, and constructions and so on.
Yeah. Fadi, what's unique about the work you're doing in the Arab community in the high-tech sector?
Well, it's all unique because it's like to build a new kind of industry. Since the big boom of the high-tech industry here in Israel, as I said, the Arab were not part of it. We brought a new kind of entrepreneur with different profile. He's not young, he's like me in his mid-career. He worked in the high-tech industry for 10, 15 years. Maybe he's a PhD in the Technion or any other university and have his IP and so on, with no background that any Jewish one have. So for them, it was very difficult to be convinced to invest in these startups. So to invest in Arab startup, we're sitting with this distance, geographical distance, and he's an Arab, and with all the other, I would say, problems we have in the Middle East and so on, it makes it much more risky to invest in these startups than to invest in startups sitting in Tel Aviv. So this is one of the main challenges we have all the time. We call it the hybrid program. We call it hybrid because of two main reasons. First of all, because we are working like in Nazareth and Tel Aviv at the same time.
Sort of the idea of integration, that's the idea.
The idea
hybrid.
is how to make this integration in a good way, so it makes it much more easier to engage with the ecosystem already working in Tel Aviv.
What kind of challenges have you experienced in this work that you're doing?
As I said, the differences in the profile of the entrepreneur, some of them because of the trust that we can't have to have these investments because of the Arab entrepreneurs. Our businessmen, the Arab businessmen, and we have a lot of rich Arab businessmen here, they prefer all the time to invest the money in the real estate, which is, there's no risk there. The other thing is, I would say, the mindset at the Arab communities. For example, to be a failure.
A failure.
Failure. At the Jewish side, to fail, you know, by definition, if you are an entrepreneur and you're running startup, you will fail first time, second time, maybe the third time you will succeed. But for the Jewish side, it's okay, we can fail, we learned, and we can continue and so on. But at the Arab side, it's like to have this stigma of being a failure. The other thing, for example, is the family businesses. At the Arab community, all the businesses or succeed are family businesses. There's, I would say, at our mindset, something that we have to change also, not just to make it change at the economical, I would say, level, but also at the social level.
Tell me a little bit about the success you've had this far and how many startups you've worked with.
Since we began, we have something like 90 startups. We succeeded to have for them something like $150 million in investments, and they created 400 new jobs at the Arab community, which is very good for us.
Fadi, where do you see the future of the high-tech industry in the Arab community here in Israel? What does that look like in 10, 15 years from now in your mind?
I think we can be exactly part, or we can be engaged with the mainstream working here now in Israel. It's not just Israel. If you will look, for example, to our neighbors also, Jordan, Dubai, they have much more success stories already. They are investing a lot of money also in the high-tech industry, especially in Jordan. Jordan is considered to be now the hub of the MENA. They are doing a very good job with them to build high-tech industry, startups, and so on. All the jobs now are somehow changing, you know, they can't still work in the traditional way. The Jewish side really bring Microsoft, Intel, and these big companies to be part here, or to come to here to Israel. They began with startups. These companies decided to buy these startups, and after that to have the R&D centers there. And we have to work in the same way, maybe.
The idea is that you're working to build momentum.
Exactly.
You want to build momentum, and to have sort of a catalyst of success, then we'll put your momentum going in the right way.
A lot of people imagine Israel as a wide open desert, and actually that wouldn't be too far from the truth. More than 60% of the country is covered in it. And that made Israel realize really early on that it had to find some solutions. Some of these technological developments have been able to transform this into this.
Israel has been on the forefront of agri-tech since the advancement of drip irrigation almost 60 years ago. I'm with Tomer Tzach, CEO at CropX, a company trying to bring these emerging technologies to the third world.
I think historically Israel needs to kind of do more with less. The time now is right for agriculture and agricultural technologies. The macro trends are there. We need to produce more food with less resources. CropX, I think, is very unique in several ways. The idea behind CropX is to help automate the farm and to do a better job in creating more outputs and using less inputs. Less inputs means less water, less fertilizer.
Efficiency,
yes. And looking from an historical perspective, I think a lot of the companies trying to help farmers were bringing their data or relying on data that comes solely from above the ground. Above the ground, I mean satellite imagery, UAVs, drones, a camera that you put on a weather station or on a tractor and so forth. Above ground data is super important, of course, and it has a lot of advantages because it's scalable, it's accessible to everyone. But the main issue with above the ground, especially when it comes to irrigation and fertilizer management, is that it comes after the fact. So like a plant that's not receiving enough fertilizer, by the time it shows something on the leaves,
it's too late.
Anytime two weeks would have passed and it's just too late.
Yeah.
And in order to be predictive and preventive, you need to also touch the soil. And here CropX, because we also are in the ground, and we also have satellite in our system and all of that, but the fact that we also have these, enables us to come 2 weeks in advance, essentially. We know what's hitting the plant before the plant knows, because we know what's in the soil. Like satellite revolutionized above the ground a decade ago, so CropX wants to do the same from in the soil.
From in the soil. Now, tell us, you referenced this little device here. Tell me how this works.
Yeah, so first of all, this is essentially a data collecting device that we developed. It's very unique, by the way. It has a lot of advantages. It's very, very accurate because of its unique patented spiral technology here. A lot of very accurate data in a very cost-effective manner. So Israel has a lot of talent, especially coming out of the technological units of the military, and access to capital. I think the Israeli government is very, very helpful with grants and so forth. So
They want it to succeed.
yeah, and I think Israel is doing a very good job in supporting its startups in that respect.
I've made my way to Jerusalem to visit Our Crowd, a venture capital, equity crowdfunding platform aimed at connecting foreign investors to Israeli startups. Founder Jonathan Medved has helped put some of Israel's amazing startups on the world map.
Tell us how Our Crowd got started and what inspired you to do that.
So many people come to Israel seeking inspiration. And that's what's so cool about Israel is you got this ancient history and this really rooted spiritual place, but is still unbelievably cutting edge and modern and cool. And much of this is centered around startups. We're called the Startup Nation. This is an incredibly optimistic place. This has always been an optimistic place. It's always been the source of good news for peoples all over the world. And today that good news is both based on our ancient sources and cutting new ground towards the future.
Tell me a little bit more, John, about what makes Israel unique. What makes the atmosphere here in this country today to really, be a seedbed, I think, for this sort of startup, high-tech, entrepreneurial spirit. What's unique about Israel there?
So number one, it's our attitude towards life and risk-taking, right? In Israel, when we toast each other, we say l'chaim. We don't say bottoms up, although nothing wrong with that. Okay, we don't say cheers. We say to life, because this is a life-affirming place, right? We believe in the afterlife, but we believe in really making every moment of your life on this planet count. One of the things that we do really well here is we take risk, right? Because when you realize that we're here for such a short time, right? People have tried to destroy the nation of Israel for generations. They haven't succeeded. Whether it was the Romans or the Persians or the Babylonians, or some of the Crusaders or the Nazis, My parents were chased out of, the Ukraine and Germany, found a home in America, thank God. So that's real risk, right? The risk of starting a company, big deal. What's the worst thing that happens to you? You fail. Now, you then get up and you do it again, and it turns out that statistically, the odds of a failed entrepreneur succeeding the second time are higher than the first timer who's never tried before. So as a smart investor, I'm looking for people often who've had a failure. The problem today is that these companies are really hard to access, whether they're in Silicon Valley or certainly in Israel. It's not like you can call your broker and say, buy me an Israeli startup. It doesn't work that way.
Because they're not public.
They're not publicly traded. They're private companies. So what we do is we hunt them down. We actually are proactively going out there and looking for these cool companies. We select about a deal a week out of about almost 100 that we look at. And then those companies, we actually structure a deal. We have to set a price with the company, say we'll buy so much of your stock for so much money. And then we invest our own capital and we open it to the crowd. And you can go either on our mobile app or online, and you can actually invest from $10,000 on up, in these startups. And right now we have 200 of them who we've invested in. We've had 35 exits. We've made a lot of money for our investors, and we're just getting started. And we're trying to get this word out. Each one has a story, and I'll tell you about a couple of them that are just remarkable companies. We backed a guy named Dr. Amit Gopher, who was a medical engineer who had built a successful company and then got into a ATV accident and became a quadriplegic, confined to a wheelchair. For most people, that's end of life, right? Just barely survive. But for Amit, his mission then became to help people in his condition walk again. So we invented a company called Rewalk, which literally has robotic legs and allows paraplegics, together with some arms, to get up and to walk, and actually walk so well that you can do a marathon. You come here and you know that it's a little different. You go into the open air markets and the spices and the smells and the food and whatnot. You hear the sounds, okay? And again, the Jews came home from over 100 countries.
All over the place.
We speak incredible amounts of languages. We're a rainbow country in terms of our colors. Okay, in other words, people think often Israel is a white country, and they're wrong. The majority of the Jews who live here have their origins in Africa and Asia. So you'll see all kinds of color variations, from dark black, Jews who came home from Ethiopia, to Jews from Russia or Holland or Scandinavia, and everything in between. Lots of North Africans and Yemenites and Iranians. And that creates this diversity, which is really a driver for innovation. Because if you all look alike and sound alike and think alike, sorry, innovation's not going to happen in that environment. And today, innovation is hot. And young people want to be part of that. But to be part of that in a place where, as you said earlier, just a mile or so away from the Holy of Holies, from where the temple stood.
Amazing.
And where you have thousands of years of history sort of ringing in your ear, saying, you know what, you might be smart, but it's not your power. Okay, we're tying in here to forces that are beyond each of us.
Absolutely.
That's what Israel's about.
It's amazing to see a country who 70 years ago had almost no way to stand on its own 2 feet. Even coming right out of the Holocaust, into a war, and coming out of it thinking that, wow, we need to do something with ourselves. It's just unheard of. One thing is for sure, is that next time you turn on your phone or open up your computer, just remember those small parts made by that small country, but have had such a major impact on this planet.